It was The Greatest Day for Anora. Probably not if you're a fan of other movies.
Siri play Greatest Day. That was my first note. What a night for Anora. 5 Oscars, Joyce.
5 out of 6. Poor. Wow, you actually did it.
It worked, but it's the
Poor
wrong
Yor
one.
Borisov, though. The only one left out of the winner circle for Team Anora.
Best
Uh,
Picture, Best
did
Director.
you officially make it or put it back in first place of your favorite film of 2024? So it's still challengers.
No, it's Anora.
Okay.
I did change
Because
that
of
back.
this? Because
No,
of
I've
this?
been I've been thinking about it. It's
Or
Anora.
like after we talked to Sean Baker.
After we talked to Sean Baker, it was that.
That's why.
Joyce, it won 5 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, Best Editing, all for Sean Baker. A record 4 Oscar wins for one project. Walt Disney won 4 for different projects.
Walt won 4 for 4 films. And Sean was like, you know what? I could do it all for one. And if only the Oscars had best casting this year, he probably would have won that since he won that at BAFTA and he would have been the first person to win 5 in one night.
And Mikey Madison wins Best Actress for Anora over Demi Moore. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk all about the winners and stuff and the big races, and then we'll talk about the show towards the end of this live stream, and we'll try to read some comments. I see a lot of people in the chat there, Joyce, are very excited
I have no idea
about this.
what they're
You
saying.
don't have it open. I have it
No.
open, and it's weird to look
You
at
know I
it.
don't read the comments, so.
Just a great night for Nora and Neon. Obviously, I was. When did you realize that Nora was going to win Best Picture and he was going to win all 4 Oscars?
When I won editing. Because like
Yes.
screenplay was first, which is like fine, because like he's the favorite for screenplay anyway, so that wasn't like you know, like a sign or anything. But once it won editing, I was like it's sweeping, and I had Mikey, so I was feeling great about Best Actress too. I was
So
not
we.
worried after editing.
So when it won editing, I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, he's going to win all the Oscars. There was a point when Brutalist won a couple of awards. I was like texting with my pals, and I was like, what if Brady Corbet just wins Best Director, and then it doesn't, like, maybe they'll just do that. But no, obviously that was not going to happen. I felt really good about Mikey Madison. I know in the comments we talked about this when we did our picks. I was very enthusiastic for Mikey. We've been talking about her, and then I switched to Fernanda at the end because I kind of talked myself into it. But I was thrilled that Mikey won. I just felt like we talked about this so much. It was so hard to go against her to win because obviously Anora was the stronger movie. I don't think any that winning 5 Oscars maybe now is obviously in hindsight likely and like was surprised, but I was shocked that it was as strong as even it was, right? Because like I really thought editing, even if Anora was going to win Best Picture, would have maybe gone to Conclave like most people did, right? But it still felt like the stronger movie. And then of course Mikey would win in that case, and she did. But you still saw a lot of people clinging to Demi Moore there.
Well, yeah, because she won SAG last weekend, and she won most of the televised precursors. And I
Mm-hmm.
think people just want her to win too, like because they like her story. She had the narrative, but I feel like people also don't learn. Like they don't care about the narrative at the Oscars. We've seen it over and over again. We saw it last year. We saw it with Glenn and Olivia, with Anthony Hopkins and Chadwick Boseman. And then same thing again tonight. And you favor the stronger film, you know. And I know people are going to point to Michelle Yeoh and Kate Blanchett, but Everything Everywhere was the stronger film.
And also Brendan Fraser and Austin Butler,
The
and
Whale was
that
the
was
stronger film. Like
they.
Elvis tanked, and
The
Phase
thing
Two.
is, like, I think there's like a perception there that went with that with the narrative. I think with Brendan Fraser, likely because a lot of people don't like the whale, right? Like obviously the Academy
The
did, but
Whale
like
makes
that.
people cry.
But like they like the whale, and that's why it won. That was the more liked movie, right? And I think you could always in these close races, time and again, we have seen, especially with this recent Academy, that if they like the movie, they're gonna go with that performance and that movie over the movie that maybe you think could win. So I think in this case, the substance, like we said, like an amazing result. If you would have said this movie would have get 5 Oscar nominations and win an Oscar on the Oscars, like even after premiering at Cannes, I don't think a lot of people thought that this result would happen. So it went really far. But there were so many signs that they didn't love it, like Margot Qualley miss or the sound miss or all these different things that you saw. And obviously the BAFTA losses in hindsight, I think were really devastating to its campaign and especially Demi's campaign that it couldn't win screenplay when Anora didn't even win screenplay there. And that Mikey beat Demi there head to head not great signs in hindsight that were pretty, like, you could see the dominoes falling for Mikey. And once Anora started sweeping, it would have seemed absolutely unhinged for it to have lost. For her to have lost, I felt like after it won so much, I was like, how is she actually going to lose this? Like, it makes no sense.
I do wonder like what the substand's were feeling like during
Probably
the
a pretty
night, like
sad.
after, like
I
were
think
they
people
still
take this very
confident
seriously.
in Demi winning? After, because it's not like, we've talked about this before. Like Anora was not lead. It like that was its ceiling basically. It couldn't get double digits because that's not the type of movie it is. And I feel like that was how people also overlooked it
Hmm.
because it wasn't one of the top nomination getters. But like we've talked about this before again, it never missed anywhere, right? Like that's why I always kept it in first and best picture, even after it got shut out at the Globes. Like it never missed nominations, and then it had the Guild wins, right? So
Right.
that's when it reclaimed its spot as a front runner. And yes, it's been shaky throughout the season, like shut out at the SAGs too. So it's the first one since The Hurt Locker to get shut out at the Globes and SAGs and then win Best Picture. Uh, so, but I think that just shows more like it just wasn't a dominant front runner like we've seen the past. I mean, like Everything Everywhere, performed poorly at BAFTA too and
Hmm.
the Globes, but still won at those places. And um, but I don't think like Anora would have won 5 Oscars last year, in a different field. So I think this is just like perfect circumstances for it. So we saw like it never missed nominations. It had the Guild support domestically because it won PGA, DGA, WGA in a smaller field because there were ineligible scripts, right? But like that was also expected for it too. And like 2 weeks ago, I had Sean Baker winning 4 Oscars, and I like, I removed 2 of them. I should have just kept them.
I felt like when we were making our picks, and even like today, I was like trying to figure out like what I wanted to do. I had Nora winning 1 Oscar at the end of this, so obviously
What?
I took a bath. Well, because I had
You just had
Fernando winning.
director, so
I
you
just
kept
had director.
Conclave.
I kept Conclave. I was like, I'll just go down with this ship. I kept thinking all the reasons why I thought. Obviously, like my heart was with Anora, right? But I was like, there were just felt like there were a lot of reasons, and I thought that it's hindsight being like whatever. I was like Conclave, just the package it had was really good, and Anora felt like you said, like not the strongest front runner, even though obviously it performed so well throughout the year and ended up being like a juggernaut basically in hindsight. But I thought there were reasons to go with Conclave. I was like, oh, the acting branch plus the international vote. I just felt like that would be enough in a close race. Maybe it pulls it off. And then it reminded me of like we were saying like of Elvis that year Elvis lost. I think I had it winning 4 Oscars and it won none. And this year the same thing. I was like, I'm just gonna go down with this with 1 Oscar because I didn't have it for editing. I didn't have Mikey. I had it for director. I had Real Pain for screenplay, which we talked about. I think you did too, unless you changed last minute.
No, I told you
Uh,
I removed 2.
and so I'm
This
like,
editing and screenplay.
it is like, but after the PGA DJ, I think I had it for 4 Oscars, and I was like, there's no way he's gonna win 4 Oscars. He's gonna win 4 Oscars alone, and it did. So there you go. Shows you
I
what we
mean, I
got.
felt like it was like I felt like he could have won 3. Like even though I had a Real Pain, like obviously he like Anora was the favorite in the screenplay. Like I was expecting him to win that, but it was really like editing was the coin flip there. I mean, I had Anora winning picture even without editing. Like he
Yeah,
could have definitely done that,
yeah.
And we've had more Best Picture winners in the preferential era winning Best Picture without editing, right?
Hmm.
We've like this is actually the 3rd year in a row the Best Picture winner has won editing as well, and before that it was Argo. So, but I think people were also like it's a recency bias thing. Like after SAGs last week, people were very spooked by Anora's shutout, and then they felt like they had to make changes. And then I didn't understand why so many people went to Conclave. Like it just one ensemble.
But
Okay.
I thought the package it had was strong. We talked about
It's
this.
it's a good package, but again, like Anora, like Conclave still missed things, right? It missed director, it missed cinematography. Anora's never missed anything.
Right. That in hindsight, again, that's like another reason why it was like clearly going to win. Right. It didn't miss anything it needed to, and Conclave not getting one, missing both of those, felt like probably not great, Bob. But I did think because of the message of the film, all the reasons like you would say. But in the end, you're right. I think like they like what they like, and they're also going to vote for what they like, and
And also the thing
that's
is,
what it
even
is.
though Conclave won Best Picture at BAFTA, like Anora did not perform poorly. Like it was never expected to win Best
No.
Picture there or Director for Sean Baker, and it actually did well. Like sure, it lost Screenplay, but it won Casting and Mikey. Like, and that
Right.
just showed how
And
strong she was, right? And it was like a clue into its strength internationally when it was not expected to win the top prizes at
and
BAFTA. And like it's so like they didn't love that movie that much, but it still won these key awards. And you would think like a movie like The Substance, if we're talking about Best Actress, would have performed better as an international film with a French filmmaker, and it didn't.
well, we knew
So
that was like a bad sign when it lost. The Substance lost when A Real Pain won over Anora and The Substance in Screenplay, and The Substance didn't win there. That was like obviously like a death knell for The Substance in hindsight. I felt like that was like a real sign. But in terms of Anora, like you saying, like it still did really well at BAFTA because it didn't need to win actress and or you know what I mean. It didn't need to win there, and at SAG, like the nominations are really the reward that it even got into ensemble. Now we talk about it like it was so obvious, but I mean a lot of people were not necessarily expecting that even going into the SAG nominations. I think it was in fifth place maybe in the odds, so it was like that was still like an unexpected nomination. So just getting in there showed some strength. And yeah, it won. I mean, like it's a great movie. I think this is my favorite Best Picture winner since the Departed. Even though I love my dear Oppenheimer, I'd go all the way back to there for me. I think this is one of the greatest Best Picture winners we've ever had, to the point where I'm actually spooked about it winning, because like usually the movies I really love should not be winning. So either my taste is now old white Oscar guy, which I guess it is, or the Oscars have really learned how to pick good winners. I don't know.
and to think you booted it from the top spot for challengers for like 8 weeks. How could
Sad.
you?
It was my favorite part of the Oscars. We'll talk about the winners and stuff. We'll go through some of the other upsets, but those are like the big top lines. But for costume design, Joyce, in our field here, we get to interview a lot of people. I interviewed 4 of the 5 nominees for best costume design,
But not the
including
winner.
that's the punchline. You're stepping on my punchline, including Ariane Phillips twice. And I did not interview the winner, Paul Teswell. We interviewed him for the site, but not me. So I was like really proud to have interviewed 4 Oscar losers, winners in my heart.
Well, that's
But
that's how Paul won, and now he's just a Grammy away from an EGOT. So
what
he
can you
didn't
do
talk
to get that
you.
Grammy?
But
And
we talked to Sean Baker, and he won 4 Oscars.
that's true.
So
That was really cool. We did
yeah.
talk to Sean Baker. He got 4 Oscars. Let's go through. So the other categories, maybe less, very obvious. Kieran Culkin went first for supporting actor, the most obvious win in the history of obvious wins. Though I will say I'm already trying to read tea leaves for the 2026 Oscar race choice. We'll talk about that later this week, I think. We'll do our early Oscar picks. I got to say, the love for Jeremy Strong was palpable and made me tear up. I was moved by Kieran Culkin giving him a shout out when he won his Oscar.
why were you like not expecting it?
I was not expecting Kieran to give a full-on direct shout out to Jeremy Strong. No.
I think Kieran is also annoyed at this Twitter perception that they hate each other. So
Well, yeah, obviously that was
yeah,
cool.
because
But like,
when he was on the Tonight Show a couple weeks ago, and like Jimmy like pointed out like their different reactions to Oscar nominations, and like I mean he made a comment, it's like it's weird when like like to be nominated against your friend, like he's not a rival, like because people think they hate each other because they're so different. They don't. So I like that he singled out Jeremy and his performance on the heels of RDJ,
was great.
shouting out his Judge co-star.
I knew he was going to shout at his Judge co-star. I was like, this is great. That movie has been memory hold, and for good reason, I think, for Jeremy Strong's work in the film. No disrespect to the great Jeremy Strong.
And then like Jeremy like tearing up when RDJ was talking about him.
It was great.
As a teenager at the Oscars 32 years ago when he was nominated for Chaplin. And we've seen the picture that he released with his statement about his nomination.
We'll talk about the show later, but I swear to God, I teared up like several times watching this. I thought this was one of the better Oscars we've seen. So Kieran wins Best Supporting Actor, the most obvious thing in the world. Incredible acceptance speech. It really started the show on a high. I thought everything about it was perfect. No notes, 10 out of 10.
That was great. Although I've seen some comments on the interwebs complaining about like how he just wants kids like with this way of like guys like
I knew that was going to get him.
it was going to be
lightly,
a thing.
I knew that
and
was
it's
going to
like,
be like
you also like clearly did not like watch the Emmys last year and like that whole speech. Like it's a thing.
Yeah,
it's a thing.
I knew that was going to be a thing. And then Zoe Saldana wins for Best Supporting Actress, which was again a complete non-surprise.
She was like crying before Davine even read her name. Like,
So it's funny during they did so we were talking about there like Davine they did the supporting actor did supporting actors like they did a little differently
they
this year
didn't
in the
do the cross
presentation,
gender.
and they all did like little tributes to the nominees, which I really liked. I was like, man, Robert Downey Jr. is great, like talking about these performances, and I thought Davine Joy Randolph was also incredible, talking about all these different actresses. I was like, man, they make them all sound so. She made them sound so great. I was like, oh, it would be so nice if they could all win. And then I was like, how are they going to do this for the lead actors when they're going to get to Carlos Sofia Gascon? And they didn't. They didn't bother. So it was like they dodged that bullet.
That whole thing bothered me because I would just I want clips for everything. So it already like got off the wrong foot with like the speeches like from RDJ about all of them, like which is fine, but I'd rather not just for me, but I think just for people in general, like I'd rather people see the clips of these movies because if you're just a casual watching the Oscars and you haven't seen any of these movies, it would be great to see a clip of a film and maybe it'll pique your interest and you might actually watch it instead of just hearing some actor praise this performance for 12 seconds. But it reminded me of when they half-assed the Fab Five thing in 2011. Oh no, 2010. Yeah, and they only did it for the leads. They didn't do it for the supportings. So here, they didn't do clips for the supportings. They did it for the leads. Like, do clips for all of them.
I will say this: I disagree, Jif, because they did a lot of clips. They did clips for the screenplays. They did clips for the movies. In the breaks, they instead of just having like people come out and be like, "Here's like." Doing like a stupid intro and then throwing to the trailer for the best picture nominees. I thought the way they presented those coming out of breaks,
they did that last year too. So
I thought that was really good. I was like, they showed a lot of clips of these movies. I felt like that. So I was okay. Like you saw Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain when they did Screenplay. You know what I mean? Like you saw these movies like
yeah, but
extensively.
that's highlighting the screenplay, not his performance.
It kind of
Here's
is the same thing.
And also they had another typo. Second year in a row they had a typo in Screenplay because they wrote the wrong Who's for September 5 after Rein It In last year. But no, like you should be highlighting the performance. Like I mean, like me personally, 24 years ago, I had not seen Pollock yet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, couldn't get my hands on it. I was 15 years old. Like, where can I see Pollock? Watch the Oscars, see Marcia Gay Harden's clip. I'm like, man, she should win the Oscar, and she did. Like that's how you get people interested.
I guess I thought they showed plenty of clips. I don't know.
And also, but what like it wasn't the case this year. But what if you're a lone nominee?
Mm-hmm.
Then you like your movie will never be shown.
Jeremy Strong, we did not see. We saw Sebastian Stan. We did not see Jeremy Strong's performance.
See, so
but still, I still thought it was great. Presentation was good. I love Robert J. praising these people.
You should just it'll also take much less time showing clips than it does for someone giving a speech.
So then they get to the lead acting win. So we mentioned Mikey Madison with the upset win over Demi Moore. I thought it was like nobody seemed really. Demi seemed a little surprised, but I was like watching the other. I watched that like several times because I love watching her win awards, and they were not as surprised. I felt like the other contenders were like, that tracks, like Cynthia and Carla and Fernanda.
Well, I mean, Anora had already won.
I think that's why. So they were just like, yeah, all right, that's fine.
Although did you see the interview that Fernanda gave to like some Brazilian media? She said that she thinks Demi is gonna win Best Actress, and she was just hoping for I'm Still Here to win International Film.
And then it did.
So I'm wondering if she still thought that Demi was gonna win.
Maybe she seemed a little surprised. So, and then obviously Best Actor went to Adrian Brody, which I would say that was for a lot of people online the low point of the night. Maybe obviously Adrian Brody does not have the most online fans, but the speech was a little like kind of get the hook.
I mean, like. You know, it was a bad night for Adrian Brody haters, starting with Halle Berry kissing him on the red carpet.
Well, we knew that from a few weeks ago. Like she's obviously there's a lot of people speaking on Halle Berry's behalf about that incident, and they love doing that. But I mean, she seemingly has been like more. Embracing of it.
She's moved on. She's like all up in his Instagram comments, complimenting him on his wins and praising him. I think after Critics' Choice, like she commented like Oscars next.
Yeah.
So like you know, they're adults here. They have moved on. They don't hold like dumb impulsive mistakes against each other.
Yes.
So other people in the world have not moved on from this, but they have. So.
but the speech was very a lot
It
of
was
nice
long, just
things.
like his first one.
A
So
lot of nice things. I kept thinking of Kieran Culkin nagging him
45
at the
seconds.
at the SAG Awards where he didn't even win. But yeah, that was a long speech. A lot of. I thought it was interesting that he was really up there. I thought the stuff he was saying was a lot of it was really good. It just was like you just got to like kind of maybe tighten it up a little bit. But I was like a lot of stuff he was saying about like how he hopes that having won and then come back 20 years later with that perspective, I thought was like really interesting, right? And I'm sure at the time when he won, he was like, I'm going to be the greatest actor and be in all these great movies. And then he's making a lot of direct to video junk, right? Before, like, he's made a lot of junk in addition to making a lot of like good stuff and like smaller parts of Wes Anderson movies or like Succession, like we saw, or Winning Time. So he's done a lot of good work, but he's also done a lot of not great work or not great movies. I'm sure his work in those movies is good. So I thought that was like a really nice part of the speech, but it just like it was so long, and then telling the orchestra to stop. I was like, this is not. Got to get him off. Got to get him off.
I can't believe you failed to mention Peaky Blinders. We got a Peaky Blinders reunion, season 4,
I knew
between
you would
him
love
and
that.
Killian.
I knew you would love
Come
that.
on.
I knew you'd love that.
Listen, he just did not become a huge star, obviously, after his first win. And like that's something that was part of his narrative this season too. Like, he wasn't like out in the wilderness, but I think it's also like, and he himself has talked about this. Is also like part because of his looks too. He's not conventionally attractive, right? Like, he's a handsome man, but not conventionally attractive, like matinee idol. And I feel like it's more like Hollywood not knowing what to do with him too. But he's done great work over the years in addition to this other stuff that he's done probably to pay the bills too, right? I mean, tonight was a great night for Succession. So, uh, and and yeah, he's never been the most succinct
No.
speaker, even though like last time the only speech we saw him give was at the Oscars, but that was also another long one, and he also cut off the orchestra from playing him off. So he did it again tonight. I think yeah, like it was a well-meaning speech. I have no problem with it.
I
So
thought a lot of the stuff he said was great. I just was like,
yeah.
it just you could feel the length. I saw people. I mean, there was a lot of tweets about like the brutalist intermission. I saw a lot of people posting the image of the
Well,
intermission.
the other issue was just that the show itself was long because of other stuff that they did in the show, and then that forced them to start playing off winners.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't. I really don't like when they start playing off people. I think it's so rude, especially when there's groups and the other person is going to talk. Like they have to know. There's rare that those guys are not gonna. Another person is not gonna speak. And to like, I think they did that with it. Was it the Dune VFX or sound? It was one of the Dune wins. They just played him off basically, right? Like that was a tough beat.
I mean, like maybe don't have a 10-minute tribute to James Bond for no reason.
Yeah, we got to trash that like towards the end of this. That was a really tough beat. But yeah, Adrian Brody wins again. I thought people were obviously hoping for a Timothy Chalamet win, but we talked about this in our final picks. It just was like great. I'm glad he won for SAG. That was really nice and deserved to get him something for this performance, which I thought was really good. But there was no sign that Adrian Brody was not going to win for this movie.
No, it was like I've always said with this race, like Adrian could lose SAG just like Casey Affleck did,
Yeah,
and
and
still
and
win
you
the
could tell
Oscar.
in the
So
room, and again, like hindsight being 2020, whatever people think online, in the room, Adrian Brody was like revered. I felt like by his
because
peers.
he has
Oh,
friends,
yes,
like he's worked for these people.
yes.
Who cares about Twitter?
I just was like, oh, like it's like clear that his performance was obviously so revered this year, and very obviously successful. So those are the acting winners. Conclave wins adapted screenplay. Its only win of the night, then right for Peter Strawn, which is a great win. Sean Baker wins original screenplay. The upsets, I guess, a little bit, but not really. I'm Still Here was, I think, actually ahead of Amelia Perez in the odds going into the show, but I know people were still maybe thinking Amelia Perez might win. I'm Still Here won. I thought that was a great show of not just. I don't think it only won because of the Carla controversy. I actually think it was clearly a lot of passion for that movie, and it manifested in that win.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. And I mean, it was already huge that it got into Best Picture. But I think it's also just a way more conventional type of film.
Hmm.
And Amelia has its fans, but also its haters.
Yeah.
So just as a film, not because of all this other stuff.
And then Flowen's animated feature over Wild Robot, which again, in hindsight, when we talked about our final pick, I ended up switching to Flow. I've made a lot of changes since we were final pick, so I didn't do very well. But I did switch to Flow over Wild Robot. Part of the reason was I was like, I think if Wild Robot was going to win as like the popular movie, it would have beat Wallace and Gromit at BAFTA. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I understand why Wallace and Gromit won at BAFTA. Like, it makes a lot of sense. And like you said, it was on like the BBC over Christmas. Like, it's like a big deal. But I was like, it just felt like there was going to be more passion for Flow. And especially this year, who knows how many people were even voting in these categories, right? Or how many, I just felt like the people who were like inspired to vote in those categories where maybe they don't have a great grasp of the categories, we're going to pick them. That was going to help Flow. You know what I mean? Like if you were just like if you were going to abstain from that category, maybe you'd be the type of person who would have voted for Wild Robot, that kind of thing. So that's why I switched to Flow.
I mean, I use that logic for other categories. I don't know if it necessarily applies for animated, because I feel like most people watch these animated films, right? It's like they're not
maybe
like they're more visible and more seen than like documentaries and like the shorts. Certainly, I don't think, like, I'm sure people abstain, but I think you have more people abstaining from some other categories than from animated. But I think it's more like you see the impact of the international voters too. I think it was like easier last year to pick Boy and the Heron with like Hayao Miyazaki, and obviously that won BAFTA, but like he was a name, right? Like,
right. I think that, yes.
And then like here, like again, Zabaladas, like it's like easier to say like, oh, like they'll go with like Chris Sanders, who's like more established for Wild Robot, who's never won before, right? So, but yeah, there was passion behind Flow, and it made international as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a sign. And then with like Wild Robot, I think it's popular, but I think it lacks the passion.
I think I noticed with both. I agree. I think with both of those movies, I would put I'm Still Here and Flow kind of together. It felt like to me that because they were smaller movies, I understand Flow won like Golden Globe, right? It was like it had been like a critical fave, right? But I think in the broad consciousness, it was a smaller movie. And because Wild Robot like kind of peaked in the fall, right, when it came out, like people saw it, liked it, it made a decent amount of money, and kind of moved on. Same with I feel like the late coming in late, there's like, you know what I mean? It's like the last thing you see, you're like, oh, I checked out Flow, I've heard people talking about it, it was great, I'm gonna vote for that, that kind of thing. I don't think they think too deeply about it, and being like a later movie that people are discovering, like we've talked about, like that always helps. I think in both those cases you saw that manifest here with those two wins.
I also think the Gintz ran a great campaign too.
He was great,
just everywhere.
So nice.
He was everywhere.
He was great. And then No Other Land wins documentary. We talked about maybe how Porcelain Lord could win there because it did so well. But again, I ended up switching to No Other Land because I was like, I think the people who are going to be motivated to vote in this category are going to be more into No Other Land than anything else. And so that's why I went back to it.
Yeah, I switched to No Other Land partially because of that, but also because it's hard to like anti-vote for something without a consensus. Like I think there wasn't a like consensus number 2 to No Other Land, right? Like I think that you can say like Porcelain War because it won DGA, but like was it really? Like
Superman might have been the number 2. You know what I mean? Like even though it wasn't even nominated.
And so, and then yeah, I think like if you're like the people who are not voting in the category, who are just abstaining because like they haven't seen enough, like they're not going to be part of this vote. So like the pool's already smaller. So like the fans of No Other Land are still going to vote for it. Right. And then if you watch all the movies and you don't like No Other Land, I think it like the support is still more diffuse among the other 4.
Yeah.
So it was like to me, it makes sense for No Other Land to win, and and then the whole thing, like it doesn't have a U.S. distributor, but it has distribution in other countries too. Yes. It's really just like an American thing with the film here. So I don't think it like the same issues it has here plagues it internationally.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think people could wanted to see it, saw it also. It's
Yeah.
been in, it's out in theaters. It doesn't have distribution, but it is out. So it
Yes.
was like I think people are able to see this movie when at least if they're like certainly if they're an Oscar voter, I think they're able to see it, or if they live in LA and New York. Otherwise, any like in terms of the categories, any other categories? The shorts I went 0 for 3. I don't know if
Oh,
you got
same.
any.
That was great.
We ended up. I think you have 16 out of 23, and I think I got 15 out of 23 in our picks. This is
Awesome.
because I was an idiot and didn't switch back to Anora and Mikey, but it's fine. I had the reason I had 15 out of 23 instead of 16 is because I had Only Girl in the Orchestra winning. We talked about this in our picks, and I was like Netflix music, and then I was like, man, Incident is probably gonna win. I just am gonna switch to that, and then it fucking lost.
I was gonna
I
switch.
can't believe this.
That was the only one I was gonna switch, and I just didn't do it. And then, but like the other two, like I'm Not a Robot and In the Shadow of the Cypress, it was like,
They were very down in the odds. Nobody was really expecting those to win. And
yeah, I'm not like upset about the shorts because like they're such a crapshoot anyway. And then I think like two of these were just so unpredictable or not like popularly predicted that like I don't really care,
This-
you know.
this
And
is
then
the second-
again, these are like short, like I feel like these are categories that people abstain from voting, so it's like who knows like how many people voted, so
These-
it's like yeah.
This is the second year in a row I think I got blanked on these, and this is the second year in a row where I did more work on these than ever before. I think in years past I would have just been like, just gonna pick on names. This year I'm watching them, I'm reading about them, and I'm like, the more I know about these shorts, the less I do well. So
Yeah,
I'm like,
no, the
I don't
secret
know
is
why.
to not actually watch anything. I'm telling you, like when I was a kid, like I saw like nothing back then. You just
these
read.
shorts, I gotta go back to. I was read more about these shorts this year than any other year. I swear to God, I was like, I'm gonna read everything about these. I'm really gonna do my homework on these Oscar shorts this year for once, and I still got 0 for 3.
No,
So it shows you what I
ignorance
know.
is bliss because if you watch something, then you have your own biases. So
Any the other category? So Brutalist won. So Anora won 5, like we talked about. Picture, director, screenplay, editing, Mikey Madison. Brutalist won 3. Adrian Brody, best score and best cinematography. Both I felt like really great wins. Very deserved and very predicted to win. Right. I think there was like maybe a lot of people, maybe some people had Conclave winning score. We talked about it though. The Brutalist is like.
no, those were its three expected categories, and then it won all of them in a row. That was like the brutalist streak, and then the Anora streak.
The
Right
kind of
after
the whole
that.
show, right? Because Dune had sound and visual effects back to back.
Yeah.
And I think Wicked came close to doing that too, right? With production design and costume design, they were at least within striking distance. So it was funny how the bigger movies kind of had their moment to be grouped together and win, but none of those were unexpected. I was hoping a Complete Unknown would win for sound, and it didn't. It's at 0 for 8, just like Elvis, Joyce. They admire the musical biopics. They don't let the musical biopics win. So just keep that in mind for Deliver Us from Nowhere for next year, Joyce.
I mean,
Or this year.
they were both just, like solid, but like mid. I don't mean that derogatory, but I think they were just like mid movies, right? Like enjoyable.
They admired the
But-
movie enough to
yeah.
nominate it, but not to
Yeah.
have it win anything. And again, that's like
Yeah.
kind of like trying to figure that out is really like the key to this is what do they admire versus what do they actually love.
And also, like, A Complete Unknown didn't win anything until last weekend when it won 2 guilds, like CAS
Yes.
and SAG for Timmy.
Yes.
But that was it. But yeah, I think a lot of people started predicting A Complete Unknown for sound just because of CAS win. I'm like, okay, sure. But like, Dune won BAFTA, and then the very next day it won the Golden Reel. So
Yeah, I
I'm
just
like,
thought they
I'm-
would be a
I'm
little
sick of
out on
Dune.
Dune too because I just thought they were kind of tired of it. But I mean, it's obviously an incredible win, very deserved.
I mean, like
sound.
it just went down, and it just pulled at 2 Towers. Like it just went down in nominations. 2 Towers still won 2 Oscars. So and then now Dune won 2 Oscars. So like I think it won the Oscars it deserved to get. Of
Yeah.
those
And then,
categories. So.
And then best song went to El Mal for Amelia Perez, which means Jacques Audiard is an Oscar winner, Joyce.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's happy with his personal Oscar and like doesn't care that much that Amelia Perez lost international film because he doesn't get an Oscar for that. So
I will say I thought he looked a little I don't know, you don't want to read into anybody, but he definitely was like kind of wrap it up to the El Mal songwriters. a little bit. He actually literally said, "Please rap."
I mean, they remember Camille's speech at Critics' Choice.
I'm like a bird. I only fly away. I don't know
Oh
where
my
my home
gosh.
is. I don't know where my soul is.
I mean, the best was Daniel Bloomberg starting singing when they were trying to play him off.
He
And
was
he just
great.
said,
I think
that
he's
was, yeah.
so. I interviewed him, Joyce. He's lovely. He's just so. He's not like very. You could tell he's like a normal person. I mean this like as a compliment. He's not used to this like pomp and circumstance or any of this. So I was like, oh, like it's cool to see like regular people win Oscars. I think sometimes, even though he's obviously incredibly talented. But you know what I mean? Like his mindset is not like, oh, I'm gonna, like he just is like, oh, I'm uncomfortable in these situations. Let's talk about the show here because we've been talking about. There's really, I mean, those are all the winners. There were no real major upsets. I guess Mikey Madison would be the major upset, but like we've talked about it a lot. I think there was very telltale signs why she was going to win, and then she won. So
I guess it would be an upset to like casuals and normies if you've just been watching the televised award shows this whole time. And
yeah,
obviously Demi has won more than Mikey has. So
it maybe was a surprise for casuals, I would say, but I think for people who are paying attention to the race, it was
the
probably,
real ones know it's not a surprise.
And then the show itself. So let's talk about that. Incredible show. I want these guys to produce the show forever. I thought they found the right pitch for this Oscars. I feel like last year was great. I thought this year was actually maybe a little better. I loved Conan. I don't know. I'm sure you did too because I know you're a big Conan fan.
Conan was fantastic. You could tell he was like holding back a little
He
bit.
seemed nervous. Did you think that
He
too?
was definitely nervous at the beginning, and I feel like I don't, I'm sure like that's not the case, but it kind of felt like during his monologue he was like self-editing jokes or something. I just felt like he could definitely go harder, and I've seen him go harder. Like even at the Emmys, the two times he's hosted, which were ages ago, but still.
I felt like he got comfortable after he landed the Carlos Sofia Gascon jokes. Honestly, because like I thought those were
Those
like
were good
risky.
jokes.
Those were
They
risky jokes.
they were, but like not that risky. I felt like those were like the perfect pitch for like addressing the elephant in a room, but not going too far with it.
Yeah,
You know.
I think it was risky in terms of like literally nobody has done that. Nobody's even mentioned. She has not
Mm-hmm.
been mentioned. Like nobody's talking about it. You're not allowed to goof on it at all. None of like at the Critics' Choice Awards, like Chelsea Handler didn't mention it. No one is mentioning it at all. So his jokes about it were very good. I thought the Anora one was really funny, and then like being like, if you're gonna tweet, I'm Jimmy Kimmel. That's a great joke. That was just a really good joke. I thought.
Yeah, I thought I actually wanted more of the cold open thing with the substance, like because he did great stuff at the Emmys when he hosted in 2002 and 2006. It was just like longer packages, so I was like expecting a longer thing.
Mm.
But sure, he just had to find a shoe in Demi Moore's back. And yeah, the monologue was good, and then I've seen people take issue with the Sandler bit.
Oh, I love the Sandler bit.
Um,
People didn't like that.
yeah,
Man, I was like Sandler Oscar.
just stay off Twitter.
I guess I was like Sandler Oscar campaign starting now for Jay Kelly. Let's go.
I
I'm
think it
like
was
get him
more
a
that
nomination.
like they felt they wanted him to wrap it up, because like the first award wasn't given out until like 30 minutes in, so
Yeah. So
and then
in terms
he
of
sung after that too.
which was fun. I mean, I thought all that was great. I love the tribute. I thought like the Wicked stuff at the beginning was great. I thought opening the show with that was actually really smart. Last year, I thought they kind of got a little dinged for holding I'm just Ken. Excuse me. I'm still Ken. It's a sequel to I'm Still Here. I'm Still Ken. Um, Holding I'm Just Ken for later in the show when like that should have been probably earlier to keep like younger people who are watching it on the East Coast engaged with the Oscars. So I thought like leading off with Wicked was like really smart and like that whole thing was really cool. I love their performance. I was like, man, Ariana Grande's got the greatest voice and Cynthia Erivo rules and like all of that was great. Conan's bit was great. So yeah, it was like a little slow to get to the first award, but then I was like, the only thing I would say, like we talked about there, it really kind of ground to a halt. I would argue with the Bond tribute.
I just don't understand. This is the third Bond tribute at the Oscars in 12 years. They did it 12 years ago because of Skyfall with Shirley Bassey. And you know who introduced that whole thing back then? Halle Berry.
And they
did it
2
3 years ago.
3
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
For the 60th anniversary of Bond. Sure. And then, like, why are we doing this now? because it's sold to Amazon.
So they did it obviously because
and then like the governors but like already
like,
did that
why.
thing with them.
Right.
Like,
but that was why they kind of did it, I'd imagine. And then I thought Amazon took a bunch of like little hits there because I thought the Conan bit in the monologue with Jeff Bezos
that was
getting delivered
hilarious.
and then
well,
stolen
that, and like
was really great.
Like
and then the Bond actor, I thought all that was fun. So anyway, they go with Halle Berry being like, "Oh, they're the Bond, like the Barbara Broccoli and Michael J. Wilson are Bond." They're like, that's the whole thing. And like,
we already did the thing with them at the.
So then you do the montage, which is like, sure. And then I was like, okay, they're gonna do a tribute to the music. So I was like, man, there's been a lot of great Bond themes, right? And I was like, Adele. I was like, and they teased the producers. This is the one I will give them a demerit. I want them to produce for life, but I think this is like a demerit. I was like, oh, they could get all these people to come back, right? Maybe they'll get Billie Eilish to come back and do like a thing, or could they get Adele? I don't know. Like they were teasing like surprise guests, and there were some surprises, obviously, in terms of the presenters. But I was like, man, I don't know, like Ray doing Adele karaoke, not my fave thing. Just don't do it. You're not Adele. It doesn't work. Like I'm sorry.
Like don't do Adele. Don't do Shirley Bassey. Yet the whole thing was giving karaoke.
It's not a great.
And then like Margaret Qualley dancing to start it off. Like sure.
That reminded me of from when we did the Oscars playbacks. That really reminded me of like an old vintage Oscars opening where they're doing like interpretive dance bits with famous people.
I was just like, why does this whole thing exist?
And so that was a bust. I thought that was really tough.
Like that took up 10 minutes, and then you had to subsequently play off winners after.
I thought that was really tough. And then no song performances, but you did have Mick Jagger come out and do like a package about the songs. I didn't actually dislike that. I actually thought that was handled pretty well. I'm not sure you needed the songs, but I think if you're replacing the songs with those music moments, when you have Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo doing it, that's great. When it's this Bond karaoke, not great. And if you're taking time from the performances of the nominees, maybe it should all be great.
They could have done the song performances instead of the Bond thing. Like, I understand the Wicked thing. That's fine. That's just like when they had Queen perform during Bo Rap's year. Mm-hmm. You know, that's fine. But yeah, Bond just completely unnecessary. And then like when they announced that they weren't going to do the song performances, like their reasoning was that they were going to highlight the songwriters. Like, sure. So that was like the package.
Yeah.
The intro for the category. And I do think that showcases the craft better than what they did with the Fab Five with costume design and cinematography. Because as we know, they were not going to do it for the acting categories this year. They claimed they had already decided that before Carla's controversy. And I understand the intent, but I'd rather you just give me another costume design fashion show like back in the 90s. Like, show me the work.
I actually like both of those packages because I was like, oh, it's nice to give such like because it kind of tied in with what Conan did in the monologue when he got earnest at the end. He talked about like the community, and it's like this is really about people who make the movies. It's not just the movie stars. And I was like, I did like seeing like, man, like Lowell Crawley got more FaceTime than like Sebastian Stan did during the show, like literally. I think not just because he won, but I was like, that's kind of cool. I think that is kind of cool, but I understand what you're saying. Like it was fun when they used to show like the craft of them and like the actual costumes and stuff.
Like 9 years ago and even 10 years ago, like all the nominee package were so great. It's for the crafts, like they show like all the designs, and then for like the sound categories they would just isolate out the sounds so you just hear it in like Mad Max, right? Like that's great. Like I think that's cool for the viewer, the casual viewer at home to see, like, and like all the actors who talked about their costume designers and DPs tonight, great. Like I'm sure they meant every single word, but I think it's like film is a visual medium, and I think when you're doing this, you're still not communicating to the viewer like what was so great about what this person did without showing it in addition to speaking about it.
Yeah, I think that's true. And then the In Memoriam, they did nice. Morgan Freeman paying tribute to Gene Hackman, and they kind of did that. And then they did a later tribute to Quincy Jones, which after the Grammys tribute to Quincy Jones, no disrespect to anybody involved in the Oscars one, including Queen Latifah, who performed and got Coleman Domingo on his feet, and no one else for a
Coleman
large portion of
was
it.
having the time of his life.
Coleman reminded me of the one year I ever was allowed to go to the Oscars when Viola Davis was fucking going nuts for This Is Me from Greatest Showman in the crowd. She was the only person standing, absolutely losing her shit. And I was like, this is great. Coleman was right dead center. I just thought that was so good.
He was like, he was also like leading a dance.
Yeah,
like,
Ariana and Cynthia got up.
Yeah.
They did kind of get up too. Again, that felt like, I don't know. I just was like, I don't. Is there a better way to do a tribute to Quincy Jones after the Grammys did the tribute to Quincy Jones? I understand, like, similarly to like the Bond, obviously they wanted to highlight this Governor's Award winner, and like that's fine. And obviously Quincy Jones is an icon and died, and I get all of that. But was there a better way to approach that? It was cool to see Whoopi Goldberg and Oprah Winfrey. I thought that was great.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like I mean, just to go back to the In Memoriam package, first of all, like, I don't know if that was the best choice of music, because they played Mozart's Requiem. And it was just, like, so intense.
It was very intense.
And, you know, sometimes you just need, like a solemn, like, guitar solo for that, you know? Not even, like a song, you know, like they've usually, especially recently, have had someone sing, which is fine too. But that was really intense.
It was definitely intense. Yes, it was.
And then the Quincy thing was, yeah, it just felt like it was like a hat on a hat. It was just like so much like extra stuff.
And then, like we're saying, like to play off a lot of the winners in the back half, it just kind of sucked. I would say this too. I don't know. So the other issue with this great, bro, and like I said, they won an Emmy for their Oscars last year. If they win an Emmy this year, I'd be totally in. I think they were great. I thought this was a great show, like a lot of fun. It did feel like a show that was made by people who actually like movies, which I think has been like not always the case. Certainly not a couple of years ago, I would argue, or whenever. When was the Will Smith slap, Joyce? Remember Will Smith?
That was 3 years ago, the same year as the previous James Bond tribute. So
that year, I didn't feel like the people who were running the Oscars liked movies. This year, I think they did. But yeah, the other issue with the show is that Hulu, Joyce, if you were streaming it on Hulu,
I was not.
I was for a little bit. I have YouTube TV now, so I can watch like shows. It's a new thing.
Congratulations.
But, I knew you were worried because I don't have cable. But watching on Hulu, Emma Stone about to read Mikey Madison. I'm like, yes, this is it. And the thing just shuts off. And it goes, that's it, bro. It stream's over. And I was like, what the hell is this? And I kept flipping around.
Oh, because that was like 10:30?
Yeah. They just literally stopped the stream.
Yeah.
So that, I feel like they're going to get some notes and emails about that. I'm sure that's going to be like a story.
Why would it shut off on streaming of all places?
Well, I guess they just turned it off.
That was not an issue with SAG on Netflix.
No,
it went past 10 there.
Not great, Bob.
That's hilarious. I mean, I have cable. I had no issues with ABC. But last year, I did have an issue last year because my cable went out during Jonathan Glazer's speech, so I missed half of his speech last year. And I had to wait for my cable box to reboot and everything.
So that was a down. That was a low. And then Conan, just on a whole, I thought was great. I thought we've seen obviously a lot of these shows since the devastation of the wildfires. They're bringing out the first responders and doing tributes to them and this and that. I thought this was like having seen other shows do it. This is a way to find a new way to do that, giving them hilarious jokes to just
Joker catching
kill.
Strays.
Oh my gosh.
Great.
So good. A lot of those jokes were really good. I just thought Conan was really funny. I thought a lot of the banter was funny. I think people really like. So I like Sandler. I like the Sandler bit. In terms of the presenters, nobody really super stood out to me. They did like. Obviously, they brought Billy and Meg back together to do Best Picture. I assume that was going to be Harrison Ford, or what do you think Harrison Ford was going to do if he was there?
I mean, I think he was just going to do score, and they just got Mark Hamill. They just.
Right, or maybe they were both going to do it
person.
together. Maybe they were both going to do it together. I guess that would.
Well,
have made sense.
I mean, they announced Mark yesterday after the news broke that Harrison pulled out of shingles. So I think they just.
So maybe they were always going to do like Billy and Meg for Best Picture.
Yeah, because there were people who were unannounced, including Billy and Meg. I think judging by like I've watched like interviews with Conan the past couple weeks, and like he's been hinting at Billy coming on, and also Quentin coming on. So Quentin was another surprise,
Yeah.
presenting a category that he has never won and has made clear that he wants to win.
That was great though. I thought that was really fun. I loved it because I like obviously knew that Sean Baker had like
He was gonna
loved
win.
once. I know, no, I
And
love
then
that.
and Mikey.
Yeah, because of Mikey, because of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I thought that was like really cool that he like mentioned that. I thought that was like really fun. Yeah, Tarantino coming was a surprise. I know people had thought maybe they were gonna do like the Fab Five for the directors too, but I obviously they didn't do that. And Amy Poehler was great. I thought she was like really funny. It would be great to see her host one of these years if they could do that, and that she would be great.
One of Conan's best line was the opposite of joy, like screenwriting.
Really clever. I just think his jokes were like so really funny. He was good. I definitely think he was nervous though when he came out. I would love to see like if they run this back again next year. Like I'm totally in. Like run Conan back, run the producers back. Like let's go. Like this is like
Yeah, I want him to do it again because I think this was just his starter year.
the one thing I'm worried about is that the ratings. Not that I know you historically do not care, but like we do need to like. I'm worried that the ratings will not be strong this year. Like it'll definitely be lower than last year. I would assume because last year you had Oppenheimer and Barbie as nominees. This year, there's no movie like that. Anora is the lowest grossing. I think is it the lowest one ever, or did it gross less than Hurt Locker? It's in that conversation at least of the modern era. I would say, right, in terms of its box office. Maybe Moonlight as well. I guess.
Well, I think with this year too, it's like they have a cover with Hulu as the streaming option, right? It's the
Right.
first
So
year
they
it's
could say
streaming,
it
so that's
did really
cover
well,
for it.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
even though Hulu broke. So
Hey, maybe it was just me. If I'm looking in this, did any? If you
well,
if your
no, like
Hulu
there
broke,
were
tell me
like
in the chat
thousands
here.
of people like at the beginning of the show who couldn't log on, right? That
That
was
I
the
saw,
thing.
and I was like, oh, I had no problem logging on. So I was like, I guess I did great.
You
And
were
then it
you were
went
there
off for
early
me.
enough, so
Maybe that's why I went off for me because I was there too early.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's about expectations, right? Like obviously last year there were a lot more popular movies, crowd pleasers that people actually paid money to go out to see, nominated. So not the case this year. So it's like lower your expectations too.
Somebody saying Coda obviously didn't even get released, so obviously that would be the lowest
No
one.
one's
But
seen
that was
Coda. I
streaming.
don't know any real person in real life who's seen Coda. So.
I know people who've seen it. How many Oscar voters have seen it? Joyce, listen, we're going to wrap up here. This is our final time talking about this season. What are your like top 2 or 3 takeaways from this award season?
I mean, it was nice to have like a more unpredictable season, even though it wasn't really by the end. But I guess it like things were not firmly set in stone. You know, like people were concerned about Best Picture until today. You know, a lot of conclavers. And you know, obviously, Best Actress continues to be a nail biter
Every year.
to the end. Hope that continues. But you know, still like the strongest movie prevails, right?
The strongest movie prevails. I think you have to trust when BAFTA like shows you the way. In terms, BAFTA is great at breaking the narratives. I think we've seen over and over
BAFTA
again.
loves to break the narratives, and Oscars do not care about narratives.
And I have to remember this. You have to remind me this next year when we do this. Like I always fall.
I
for
always
this.
I always remind you, and you follow your heart, just like Neon asked
Anora,
you to.
just like Anora,
You
I
follow
followed
your
my
heart.
heart.
You listen
Honor
to
the
the
man,
last.
honor the film.
You listened to the
Follow
last
your
person
heart.
in your ear, which was SAG. So you had Conclave, and then you just went with Fernanda as a bit.
Well, we talked when we did our picks. I like did pick Mikey. We talked it over, and then I was like, I'm just gonna do Fernanda. What the hell to give us the third option?
I do
But
think
yeah, I gotta
like
remember this stuff next
with
year.
with Anora winning 5 out of 6. I'm sure you know some people find that boring. It does remind me of the Emmys too, and like the Emmys sweeps. I think. I think it also shows like a larger symptom of like the fractured landscape we're in now, with like too many options, and also films and shows out there that like the top contenders rise to the top of the pile for people, and then because like how many features is nominated this year total? It was like 35 or something, which is like very low. It's
We've
like
seen this now
like
becoming
weaker
a thing.
movies, yeah, are not given like the proper time or attention, and they don't. It's like it's harder for them to break through and get nominations, right? Like there's no lone acting nominee this year. Like we've seen this be an issue at the Emmys, where it's just like two or three shows dominate the nominations, right? They just like these people just watch like two or three shows and they win all the awards.
I mean, and I'm looking at next year. I'm already I'm in the lab, Joyce, trying to figure out my 2026 Oscar
I haven't even
predictions.
started, so
I've already made several revisions to my list, and I will say the same thing is true though. It's like I feel like you could just go through and have every like a lot of like three, top. It's very top heavy again, and it's just trying to figure out what will be the top heavy movies. Like we said, like no one maybe would have predicted The Substance as a top heavy movie, but it clearly was, right? It got picture, director, actress, screenplay, and one makeup. They were just clustering the nominations basically around the movies they have talked about or saw or admired or in some cases loved.
yeah, it's interesting because if you like go back to Parasite, like that was an underdog until the end. Like 1917 was winning mostly everything. So, and then Parasite had the passion to win at the end, and it was like Anora, like it had its most successful night of the season, like at the Oscars. Like same thing with Anora. Like Anora had a shaky season this year, at the televised awards, especially. And then I mean after that it was like Nomadland, like COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like okay, sure. And then Coda, which was a last minute thing too, because people didn't love Power of the Dog.
But if you
So
look at these and the ones you're talking about though too, Coda won all its Oscar nominations. It could
yeah,
have
and
won
then
even more if it had more nominations, right? You know
yeah,
what I mean?
because it surged late. It surged into phase two, so
But
like it wasn't seen enough in phase one to get more nominations. So, but like that wasn't, like it still wouldn't be able to get 12 nominations like Power of the Dog did. It would have been like
right,
an Anora, right?
right.
And then Everything Everywhere was just a juggernaut. Like
Mm-hmm.
same thing with Oppenheimer. So Anora wasn't a juggernaut, but I think it was also the field you had this year because of the strikes and everything. So I don't think it was the strongest field this year.
No, we talked about how hard it was even to find 10 Best Picture nominees. I think in a different year, maybe Anora would not have I don't think Anora would have won. It's apples and oranges and it's different years. I don't think Anora would have beaten Oppenheimer
No.
based on how, but I mean, it might have been very competitive with Everything Everywhere.
I mean, it's just all about timing,
It is all
like
about timing.
it's about timing. So it's
So it's only
timing
the
and luck.
third. It's only the third Palme d'Or winner, right, to win Best Picture. Marty, Parasite, and now Anora. So you need one name, and it helps actually if it's a proper noun.
And
So
then, like,
what's on the can? We got to find out whatever's on the can roster this year that
well,
files that down.
well, yeah, because if it's not a single word title, then it's out.
That's it.
So
Sorry.
like you can't even consider it. So
No. So I guess that's it. We're gonna wrap up then. A lot of great comments. Thank you for watching and commenting here tonight as we do this late. You can watch this again, I'm sure, when we're done.
why would you?
Because we're great. I would watch it again. I'm gonna go back and watch.
You
this over
always
again.
watch them again.
Thank you so. I want if you're punching out because you're not coming back for the Emmys next week. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next Oscar season. But come back and watch for the Emmys. We do a lot of great stuff all year on the Emmys. We'll talk about. We're gonna do
Emmys
our
are
early
more
Oscar
fun
picks.
than the Oscars because there are no precursors. So
It's more fun, but like you were saying, it's just it does get like not bad, but it all coalesces around certain shows, basically, right? But it's gonna be a lot of fun. We're gonna have so much fun. A lot of good shows, Joyce. I'm loving Your Friends and Neighbors. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this.
You would
It's
love
absolutely
Friends and
awesome.
Neighbors.
If you like, it is like great. Craig Gillespie rules. He's directed the first two. It's great. So I'm loving TV. Got to talk about TV. We'll do our early Oscar picks. So thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. All right. Have a good night. Bye, Joyce.
Bye.
I think that worked, Aaron. Right? It says upload is recording.
That was fast. Well, I guess because it was live.
Hang on, let me see.
All